Recording in progress. One, two, three. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another glorious episode of MAIM Time. My name is MAIM, and I'm your host for the show, a show where we talk about the Asian diaspora experience, overcoming our identity struggle, and intergenerational trauma, and becoming the best versions of ourselves. And we have a very special guest today. We have Chelsie, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name.
Chelsie Pinello.
Hello, Chelsie Pinello.
Yeah, half Italian, so that's where that comes from.
I see. Well, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I am actually pretty exhausted. I only got a couple of hours of sleep last night, or this morning, I should say. Really busy with all the different projects. Got a lot going on in my life right now, but it's really good. I chose to be here, and I choose this moment, and I choose to be here with you right now. So this is really dope. This is really dope because I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, since you are releasing this sweet independent film called Mandarins. Would you tell us a little bit about the project and yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsie. So I basically started working on this project, Mandarins. It's an indie short film that I'm directing. Started writing it in about January of 2021. Really had sort of rewrote and wrote the script for a little over a year, I would say. And then over the last 2 months, it sort of really gained momentum. We have like a full team behind it now. We're in the full swing of things of pre-production and casting. And it's basically a film that explores intergenerational trauma, most specifically sort of what occurs in what we often see in immigrant communities and the Asian American community. And it's going to be shot in DC's Chinatown. And that's where I'm currently based.
That's dope. And what was the original inspiration for it? Like, have you always been interested in film, and you were a film student, and then you drew on your own personal experiences, and you're like, oh, like I want to make a movie about this particular thing? Like, what was it? Was there a specific moment, or is it just like on a general collection of ideas over the years?
Yeah, so I studied film at Syracuse University in upstate New York. And then I graduated. I ended up getting a job as a producer in downtown DC, and I've been sort of working at that job. It's in like mostly corporate video. That's just sort of the environment that DC hosts. And then I've just sort of been like ruminating on these subjects for like the past couple of years. It's just things that I've sort of personally been just thinking about, and it sort of stemmed from even just like my growth that I've achieved with my mom and like our relationship there. And then also just like what I've observed from like my extended family, like my cousins on my mom's side, I'm really close to, and just like watching like and hearing about stories of their relationship with their mom, and then talking to my mom and getting to know her more and see her sort of more as like this human being, like separate from my mother, like just being the role of my mother, and talking about her relationship with her own mom. So it's just been a lot of these sort of just like topics that I've just been thinking about. And that's just sort of where it came from, was just realizing that we had all sort of gone through the same thing. Like I had with my mom, she had with her mom, my cousins had with my aunt. And I don't know, it's really a film that's just sort of like honoring all of our journey with each other, and like honoring sort of like the places of forgiveness that we have all sort of reached with each other. Yeah.
Well, isn't that just fucking beautiful? Because it really is the perfect time. I mean, there's never gonna be a better time in human history except fucking right now, where we can, I mean, we're label it how you want it. We're privileged to grow up in the West, right? We have the privileges and the opportunities to read books, to have the time to understand ourselves, and not be forced to like be stuck in the fields, or working the rice farms or something like that, or working in a factory like the parents' generation. They made the sacrifices, right, to come to America or to another country for a better, ideally for a better life for their better lives for their families. And the fact that we have the internet now, like I don't think, can you imagine your mother or my mother when they were children, imagining that they would go to the other side of the world, to a place called America, and that they would have children who grew up speaking English, and
Oh
then
my
they would meet
God.
each
Yeah.
other, and then they would meet each other on this thing called the internet, and have podcasts and do movies that people would see from all over the world, and connect with interesting different Asian diaspora from all over the world, whether Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, you name it, and that they would be able to have this international dialogue about stuff, deep stuff like intergenerational trauma. There's never been a better time in human history than now collectively for all Asian peoples, because Asia is on the rise right now.
Yeah.
Asia, yeah, this is the Asian century. And so like culturally, politically, financially, like Asia's the shit, and Asian people are the shit. And
Absolutely.
all the Asian peoples, like, are just have grown in cultural, political power and whatever. So we are, I think it's amazing to ride this. It's important to ride this wave, this new Asian renaissance for Asia and also for diaspora worldwide, because in my own life, I experienced a renaissance. In my own life, I went through a complete personal journey of transformation from 10 years ago until now. Me coming to Korea, not knowing anybody, not speaking the language,
Mhm.
you know, not even having like the sense of confidence to like keep a job, get a job and then keep it, and having the confidence that like, oh, I can get a job and make money and pay rent. Like even stuff like that, I came um without anything, just like with my I'm eternally in debt to my oldest brother, because he's the one who brought me to Korea and mentored me,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
kind of set me loose. But uh I went through this renaissance in my life, like, and that was in 2012. Like no one knew about Korea, I think, until like Psy's Gangnam Style blew up, right? And then it's like I think
Mhm.
I was in Korea. I don't remember. It's been such a long time, but like after moving to Korea and then sometimes going back to the States, did I realize, oh, people know about Korea more now, because like I was like the only Korean kid growing up in the States. And so people didn't even know Korea was a country. So like, so people would always, like when I was a kid, they'd ask me, "Are you Chinese or Japanese?" I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
I'm Korean, motherfucker. It was like, but honestly, but in a sense, like, oh, I didn't see too many Korean people around me in North Carolina or Kansas or whatever. So like, well, shit, maybe I am Chinese, because I don't know what Korea is. Who am I? Am I
Yeah,
Korean?
that's
Am I?
crazy.
Isn't that crazy? And so when I was a kid, I experienced this, kids calling me chink and to go back to China. And now everyone wants to come to Korea. Everyone loves BTS and Parasite and
I
fucking
know
Squid Games or whatever.
it's pretty crazy what's been happening. And honestly, I've been like like when I like set about writing the film, I wasn't ever sort of like I knew that it came from like very like real and relatable experiences in the Asian American community, just because like growing up, like I just feel like my friends that were like Asian American just like truly got the relationships with like their parents, like that my other friends who like weren't Asian just could not for the life of them understand, or just like relate at a deep level too. And that honestly made me like feel closer to them because of that. So when I went about writing this, like I didn't like I knew I was drawing from like real experiences, and like I had a lot of Asian friends that had sort of gone through the same thing, but I didn't understand like I don't think like truly like how like relatable the topic would be. Just because like and I know that we met each other through Asian Creative Network, the post that I had made for the casting call. And just
Shout
the
out to Asian
response,
Creative Network. Shout
yeah,
out Asian
I
Creative Network. Yes.
I'm like starting to like delve into Facebook groups, and it's pretty incredible. And like I don't know, I feel like I had sort of been like disheartened for a little bit about Facebook, and I was like, ah, like the boomers are ruining it. But then I've been getting into Facebook groups, and I was like, wait, this is actually really wonderful. There's like a whole bunch of like really wonderful communities on here that I just like didn't know about. But anyways, the reception to that post and like honestly, we got like over 85 auditions, which is way more than like I did not anticipate that whatsoever. But more specifically, like in the Google form that we had people sort of like answer a couple like pretty simple questions, like, you know, why are you interested in the project? Like, Which character do you see yourself as most? Like, people were pouring their fucking hearts out. Like, it was so heartwarming. They were like, oh my gosh, like, I relate to this character so much. Like, I was the Olivia growing up, or like, I was so much the Jenny. Like, this is so cool that you're making this. And it was just like, I did not expect that at all.
How many roles did these people, how many roles were there? Are there three, four?
Yeah, there's 3 roles,
Three roles
and there are
and over
over
80 people
85.
auditioned.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So I just like, I really didn't expect that at all. And just like seeing how many people who were like, and these are people who hadn't even read the script yet. Like, it was just like the simple casting call with like a couple of descriptors for each character, like the basic log line, and like a one sentence about sort of the inspirations. And people were like pouring their hearts out and were like, I'm so happy you're making this. And I was like, oh my God, like, we got to make this. Like, we really got to make this. Like, I had no idea that it would be just, even just like a simple casting call like that would like move people. So it's just really cool to see that. And it's sort of like showed me how much like the time is now to like tell these stories, like just like you were saying. Like, this is the time. Like, this is like a hot topic. Like, we're there and we're like ready to talk about these things.
This is the best time in human history for all Asian peoples to talk about these things. And we're better, well equipped for all kinds of economic, socioeconomic reasons. We have the time, we have the luxury to think about that. And, we have the luxury of maybe growing up in the West and being like, oh, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to be like a film director? Oh, what do I want to be like an artist? Like, do I want to be a doctor? Like, this is like a Louis C.K. bit. He just says like, he just jokes about how young people, millennials, like, oh, what do we do with my life? And it's just like, just find some food and just eat it. Just put it in your fucking mouth. Like, don't worry about other stuff. I'm butchering it, but we have this privilege, and we can tell all those stories. We can delve deep and hard into all these amazing and tragic and beautiful stories of suffering and sacrifice and triumph, right? And so, I mean, there's so much we could go into, right, Chelsie? Like, I think about my parents' struggles, and I, over the past couple of years, since 2018, I reconciled with my father. Like, to briefly, family's a long story, but in 2016, my father passed away, and my mom and I were not on good terms. So after that, like, I didn't see her for 2 years. I cut her off completely, and then I happened to stumble across her. Kind of, she stalked me on Facebook, and she found that I frequented this amazing cafe in my neighborhood here in Seoul. And so I saw her in 2018. Yeah, that was February 2018. So that was like 4 years ago. I wasn't expecting to, like, jaw drop, like, mom, what the fuck are you doing here? Blah, blah, blah. And then my Korean American bro from LA was just like, Mom, we were just talking about your mom last night. Like, this is your opportunity. You got to talk to her, man. You got to reconnect with her now. We were just talking about this yesterday at the bar. And then I was like, oh, I guess you're right, because I went there to the cafe with like my friend of mine, a bro of mine, to like have coffee. I didn't expect to see my mom there, especially like the day after I was talking with my bro, like, dog, I'm having hangups with my mom and family. He's like, bro, I know Korean parents, we're Americans, it's generational gap and blah, blah, blah. My dad used to all that shit, right? And then so from 2018, I started reconnecting with my mom, and that's when it started. And then especially the past year, oh my God, like, when we spend time together, we can spend the whole day talking. And then we just go back and forth. She tells me like all the stories that I've never heard, all the shit that she went through growing up in Korea, and then having to go to America with and like raising 3 boys, me and my brothers, and like feeding my father, like the struggles and challenges that she went through, the struggles and challenges and trauma that my father experienced since he was a kid, not growing up with his mom, having a very abusive like father who like stabbed him when he was 13 with a broken soju bottle, like in his sleep, crazy stuff like that. Crazy kind of trauma for like stories of different like cousins and relatives and what they went through. And then by our grandparents, like father's side, mother's side. So all the things that like I could understand, listen, finally hear my mom talk about all these stories. And then and I could only do this because I made the personal decision to, one, connect with my mom, and also because I wanted to reconnect with my heritage and my culture and learn Korean. I could facilitate mom, like asking her all these questions in Korean. And then
oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
That's
so
much better than me.
Well, I think I mean, it's amazing that you like the fact that you have this film because you were able to reconnect with your mother is amazing. And there, I feel like 99% of like Asian diaspora children like you and me, like they're not, a lot of us aren't going to be lucky to have this experience to reconcile with our parents if we've had some
It's
bad blood.
it's really beautiful. Like I think, I don't know, just, and obviously like each of our own stories is very unique and like not speaking for
Yes,
everybody.
yes,
But just like thinking back, I think it was probably like in high school and maybe a little bit like early college where just like, be fighting all the time with my mom and sort of coming at it in this like, I don't understand like why you're doing these things. Like, why can't you just be like my other friends' parents, and just that sort of like anger and resentment, and just really not like seeing them for people, and like not like thinking deeply about maybe like what exactly formed them the way they are. Like they weren't just your mom their whole life. And so, and then being able to like actually, mature enough to be curious about like, okay, like actually, yeah, what was your childhood like what were your parents like? And then slowly sort of like peeling the layers back and realizing like, oh, actually everything makes a lot more sense now.
mm,
Like, I don't know, it just seems like a very beautiful thing, um just to be able to have those conversations with our parents and like really like see them for who they are, as like these like fully formed humans who make mistakes, and are certainly like not perfect, but you can have this like empathy for like who they are.
totally. And they are indeed like fully formed human beings. There was a whole context and life story beforehand, but when you're a kid and you're the only, maybe like me, you're the only Asian kid growing up in the neighborhood, and all your parents are not all that they're doing, but like they're at home, they're like yelling at each other, and you go to school for like 7 hours a day, everyone's speaking English, so like you just spend that much time kind of interacting with people. I mean, like trying to figure out the world. Okay, I'm in this classroom, everyone's speaking English. I go home, dad comes home late from work, mom's like and dad are yelling at each other, brothers are yelling at each other. Like, I don't know what's going on. This is scary. Home life is scary and dysfunctional and traumatic. So like, I'm gonna be more comfortable speaking at school. I don't know. I'm still trying to piece together like how is it that I didn't grow up speaking my own mother tongue, despite growing up in an American, a Korean household in America and all that stuff. And there's different angles that I take on it every single time. But my point being is, this is actually what you and I are going through is just the natural result of people growing up, right? Like this happens to any mature person who like maybe they have some bad blood with their parents, but then they hit puberty and then they become an adult, they learn to pay rent, and then they're like, oh, okay, life is hard, and then we appreciate our parents' struggles and what they've done for us, right? So I think that's pretty natural progression for most healthy, normal adults who are trying to like, have like a mentally wholesome existence. And I think for us, it's especially more dynamic because of like the cultural gap as well, and like the physical geographical dislocation, and how it really adds a lot to the mix. Let me just say, and um, I to expound on that even more, like because of how I say it, but like my identity crisis growing up, because
Mm-hmm.
of all these problems that I associated with being different. So why is it my white friends or my black friends, classmates, they all speak English with their English speaking American families. But what the fuck is wrong with my family? I can't even speak my own mother tongue, blah, 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 blah. I keep rambling on this, my podcast. That's why I have a podcast. But, I just, I was just so confused. And so I associated with being Korean, like my dysfunctional family. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I associated the dysfunction and the trauma with being Korean or with being Asian, and so I hated being Korean and hated being Asian. And I think that's such a sensitive sore spot that a lot of people are afraid to even admit, like they don't even acknowledge it to themselves. That one, that's not actually, I mean, I understand it, right? That
Mm-hmm.
I feel that pain, whoever's listening, but it's not ideal and it's not natural and it's not wholesome. And I don't think in the end it's life affirming. And in the end, that's not who I wanted to be. Who I wanted to be is well, many things, but one, I want to be happy for myself as an individual. So if I want to be, if I really want to be like, oh, well, like I'm gonna separate myself from the past and my Asian side and that culture, because that is like, that gave me trauma, intergenerational trauma. And, that's like backwards, and like, they don't know how to treat their kids with respect and blah, blah, blah. There might be some truth to that. But then how I feel about it now, especially having come back to the motherland
Mm-hmm.
and learning culture and understanding like the people and where my parents came from and all that, I realized, oh, the if I actually want to be a better person, or maybe for lack of a better word, the bigger person for my own personal self love and self worth, and for this, how to say this, for my maximum personal self fulfillment, I have to forgive everybody. I have to forgive everything about my parents. I have to forgive and let go of any grievance towards my parents or my family, or towards the identity of being Korean, any resentment, right? That
Yeah.
resentment towards our moms or whatever. Like, for my, not just for their sake, but as an individual, as a Western individualist motherfucker that I am, as a proud Western individualist, blah, 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 blah. I live for myself, blah, 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 blah. I live for myself, so I want to be happy. I want to take good care of myself. I want to have a healthy hope. I want to live life without burdens, right? For my sake, I should forgive my mom and try to connect with her if I have that opportunity. I should forgive
Yeah.
other people. It's and so this is a mind fuck, and no one ever fucking told me this, Chelsie. But it's so important. It's so important. This is the motherfucking key. You got problems with your family? We all do. We all got struggles
Yeah.
with the mom
I
and
mean,
dad. Yeah.
yeah,
But if
sorry.
you forgive them for your sake, is cut the chase, yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I think I don't know, I sort of started out with the main theme of the film, and sort of where I was going to build the world around and how I was going to get to that point is really thinking about forgiveness, like you were talking about. And how obviously, like in certain situations, like, yeah, like there are times where you should cut off people
Yeah.
who are just never going to change, but oftentimes it like falls more into that sort of like gray area, not completely black and white, like where people are like really not good or bad. They're sort of just like products of their circumstance. And so just like thinking about forgiveness as both like a ways to like a selflessness and a selfishness in it, where you're forgiving to forgive the person, but also, and not as a means to necessarily condone things, but forgiving to like free your own self and to find peace. Because what can you do sometimes, especially, and I'm sure this, like the past is very strong, and sometimes there are things that you just really can't change and sort of get over as people, if there are things that sort of like were ingrained in your childhood. And I see some of those things in my mom. And I think it is a little bit unreasonable to ask her to change in certain ways. And so like, what am I left to do? Like, I can, stay mad about certain things. Like overall, she's a great mom. But there's also just like products of the past, like just in her, and sort of like unchangeable. And what can I do about that? I can't really do much besides like just like forgive for all of us. And that's actually something that I feel like she did with her mom in a lot of ways, especially as I got to like learn more about the way her mom raised her, and sort of her mom's like very reserved emotional capacity for her children, and then just seeing how much emotional capacity my mom had for me, which is way more than what her mom gave her, is incredible in itself, right? You're like, wow, like you've already like bridged the gap in a lot of ways from what your mom gave to you. And so yeah, those are my thoughts on forgiveness.
Yes, and like, I mean, forgiveness is so important. Not only, and again, not like, this is multifaceted, of course. So I'm coming from the rant that I just gave, like that's towards people who are like me, who like
Mm-hmm.
have that mindset, like, oh, I am like the Western individualist, American, whatever, minded, logical person. So I'm going to base my ego off that and identify with that as a reaction to the trauma of being Asian diaspora. And so like I'm gonna just use that as that logic as a justification as to why I refuse to connect or forgive my parents, because they're collectivist and they have all this bullshit and cultural propaganda. So, but I'm better than them, and like like I used to feel that way, or I used to justify myself that way in the way that
Yeah.
I thought, or my attitude towards them. But then um thank God I had a couple of other Korean American brothers, other a couple of other Hyungs who like just they could see through that and like, Mime, who are you fooling? Like you think you're so
Yeah.
logical and you think you're so that, but you live in Korea now. Think you know what kind of society your parents came from. It wasn't just your parents; it's all our parents, dude. All our parents are
Yeah.
fucked up. You expect your parents to change, that they should be better. You expect this whole country to change. This all the environmental and socioeconomic pressures, this pressure cooker, this meat grinder that is this world and is this society. And your parents came, like your parents succeeded. They went to America. We succeeded. Blah 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 blah. So that is to address to the hard-headed people out there like me, the Asian diaspora, who think that they're so logical and whatever, for not wanting to forgive their parents because of how they hurt. I feel the pain. I feel it. I get it. And I'm not saying your resentment isn't justified. And like I feel, I know. I mean, I don't know whoever's listening, right? We may never meet. I I know what that resentment is like. But for your own sake, consider, if it bothers you, like what if you really want freedom? If you're such a Western individualist and you're about like freedom and like the sovereign individual, whoever's out there listening to this, like, well, then you want freedom from your own mind, or you want freedom to have the control. Don't you want to have complete control of your life? You're the master of your fate and the captain of your soul type shit. Well, then you should have control over your emotions and like how your attitude and how you respond to events and people in life that trigger you. So that's the self-interested side. But then there's the other beautiful side, which is honoring our ancestors, honoring
Yeah.
our mothers and fathers, honoring our families. Not because they're forcing us to, and that is the whatever the Confucian Asian hierarchical cultures, they're all just like, you have to do this for the family. It's like it's all about the family, and it's like,
Hmm.
you know um
I
uh
mean, there's some truth to it. Growing older, and it's like, yeah, like my parents have given me so much. Like, I feel like before, when I was younger, it's like when my mom would like say that to me, and it'd be like, why do you always say, like, you chose to like have me, like, like it wasn't my decision. I don't know. And just thinking about it now, I mean, obviously, like as you get older, you just recognize how much they sacrificed for you, how much they did for you. And you're like, yeah, actually,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
so
and
important.
it is, see, but the thing is, and here's the beauty of it, you and I can acknowledge the nuances of that from both sides, because I feel I'm just like you, sister. Like, yeah, I didn't choose to be here. So like, as and I feel like as an individual, like I deserve to have autonomy over my own life. Okay. And just because previous generations didn't have that privilege doesn't mean that I don't deserve or cannot be able to or shouldn't seek autonomy and like have control over my own personal destiny. Like I feel very strongly about that. However, that is not a false dichotomy with wanting to serve the family, wanting to honor the family, and bring a great honor to my Asian family name or whatever the fuck, because actually that makes me even more of a richer, more kinder, more compassionate, fuller person. As to instead of like having a ego separation, like, oh, I'm better than my parents, so I'm just gonna live my life. No, no, no. I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna live my best fucking life, and whatever is, I want to get tons of money. I want to go travel. I want to have lots of adventures, and I want to meet lots of people and do like enterprises. I'm gonna do this not just for myself, but um in respect and honor and gratitude towards all those who came before me, my great 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 grandparents, all the way to my parents to now. I'm gonna live the life I'm living. I am living that life. I'm living their wildest dreams. The older generations, grandparents, and then their grandparents, all the wars and famines and shit that happened in Asia, all the turmoil. Um, I like to think that like when they were in their midst of the greatest untold suffering that we'll never understand, that they had some sort of like hallucinogenic dream in their darkest moments, and that dream was me living this life wearing this bow tie before you right now, throwing great parties in Seoul, living the life, you know, having this journey, talking with amazing people like you, Chelsea. I want to think that I am honoring my ancestors and people like my late father, like every day, like because every morning when I wake up, no one told me to do this, but this is just something I choose to do as an individual. I make my bed, I get out of bed, and then I do the bow. I bow and I think about, and in that moment I take a like I think all the people I say, thank you ancestors, please guide me. Thank you for another great day of life. And in the ancestors, I like include my father and like great figures from the past, like King Sejong the Great and whatever. I just say like, watch over me, guide me, let me live my best fucking life today. Thank you so much for another day of life. I wouldn't be here without you, because we wouldn't be. It's not about like, I don't know if you go to church, and some of our listeners, you know, they might be Christian or whatever, but like I don't care about Jesus anymore. I grew up Christian, like my dream was to be a pastor, but now I don't care about like Jesus or like any religion. For me, like family in a way is the religion. I don't know. Like, my views might change in 5 years, right? Like I'm always, but just for now, like this is how I feel, like because our parents were real and they came from their parents and their parents were real, and they struggled and they had dreams and hopes and fears that the next generation would be something greater. This is real, this flesh and blood. And I came from the flesh and blood of my parents, not some guy named Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha, but like this is the real shit. This is what I want to live my life for. Because I am the incarnation, the latest iteration. I am the cutting motherfucking edge of evolution for my family, for our peoples collectively, for Asian peoples. I'm representing the motherfucking best all around human qualities when it comes to being an Asian person, to being a Korean person, to being an American person. I tell myself this: I am the best that the Korean gene pool has to offer, that the American people, the American culture has to offer. I'm the peak, as the best that I could be, the best in my family bloodline. Um, and you know, some people might not care about that or whatever, and like, and the reason why I say that so strong is because most of my life I felt the opposite, right? Like if you don't have that kind of emotional like hangups with it, like this may not apply to you, but that's just how I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like bringing honor because I choose to, because it makes me the better person, and I think it's cool.
Yeah, just striving to be the best version of yourself you can be is a way to honor your parents and all that they've done to get you to where you are, for sure.
Yes, and you know, when we're growing up, like you'll hear it from people, like you might hear older people that, oh, you'll understand someday like what your parents went through, like um and like yeah, everyone's family situation is different, but I just want to say to whoever's listening to this, you know, if you have like intergenerational trauma, or you know, you feel that trauma, like you get what we're talking about, like you are not alone. Here's the other thing: there's now, because when we were in our teens, there was no podcast, there was no Asian Creative Network or Asian Hustle Network. There weren't
I
like,
feel like it's got to be so different for the kids in school now, just thinking like, I mean, these were not conversations that were being had, like, and even when I talk to my friends from high school now who are Asian, and just sort of like all of us looking back and sort of like feeling icky about ourselves for like trying to like shed that Asianness. Like I'm sure you felt this before, where it was like my mom's like talking to me in Chinese in front of my friends at school, and I'm like, Mom, stop talking to me in Chinese. Or like she's on the phone talking to me, you know, just like this like rejection of it, even though it was like something that you loved. And like, or like the very classic like lunchbox moment where you bring the food and somebody comments and says it looks disgusting, and then you're like, well, I don't want this, like why can't you pack me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And like I feel like it's got to be like less of that sort of thing now, just because people are more aware of it, I would think, like especially the younger generation. But yeah,
that's so cute. Mom, why don't you
At the
make me feel
time,
cute?
it didn't feel cute.
Yeah, right. Of course, it doesn't feel cute, but like that's the beauty of it, as we can look back now, like as adults with some perspective and be like, okay,
It's
because like
so
yeah,
silly.
at the time it was like the biggest deal in the world. Because and look, it's natural and it's totally understandable that you had that emotional reaction as a kid, because as kids we're trying to figure out the world, we don't know anything, and we don't want to feel left out. We want to feel like we belong. It's completely
Yeah.
natural. It's completely human. So it's natural for us to get upset if our parents do something, like I've got like yeah, cafeteria stories. Like I have I bring to school the lunchbox. It's like a cylinder, it's like a three-tiered cylinder. It was
Yep.
actually really
Yep.
cool. It was like
I
you've
know.
got
You
like
think
the
about it now and you're
middle,
like,
yeah.
that's actually like amazing. Like,
Yeah, it's
what a
like,
good idea.
yeah, I should thank my mom after this call. Like, yeah, I remember all those lunch boxes you made. Like, that was really awesome, actually, in retrospect.
Yeah.
I didn't thank her. I haven't thanked her enough, actually. But we can talk about these things now, and like, yeah, people in school now, they can be proud of being Asian and blah 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 blah. And if you're listening to this right now, I wanna like really drive this home, and I want to drive it hard to any of this. Like, if you're listening to this right now, and you can relate with our struggles at all, Chelsea struggles and mine struggles, you have it really fucking good because you're listening to us. We didn't have these conversations. We didn't have anyone to quote unquote look up to, not even look up to, but just to relate and connect. So we don't feel like we're alone in this world. Because I can't imagine, being, half Chinese, half Italian American, feeling like, well, you're the only mixed person in your school who's quite like you,
It's
so you must feel fucking alone, like growing up, like no one understands your struggles. Why is it that you're the only one with a Chinese mom and like you're going through these struggles? I imagine there wasn't a whole community of half Chinese people that you grew up with. There wasn't like dozens
yeah.
of you forming an enclave. So
It's
I
sort of yeah. Sorry.
go no, go ahead.
um yeah, no, it's sort of interesting. I did have like the luxury of growing up in a very Chinese Asian populated area. I think it's like a little bit interesting with like my own perspective on it, because like I can be pretty like white passing to the unkeen eye. And then I know that there's like just like sort of the experiences of mixed race people sort of runs the gamut in terms of like how much
Mm,
their parent sort of involved them in the culture. I will say that I was raised in a very, very Chinese household. Like it was Chinese. Um, it is still very Chinese. My mom only speaks to me in Chinese. She texts me in Chinese. I was plopped down in Chinese Sunday school at the age of 2 before I had gone to any sort of American preschool. So that's sort of like an interesting thing that happened, but it's just still funny to sort of have the privileges that come with being white passing in certain circles, but then still I don't know, just feeling the otherness regardless. Like
mm,
the fact that like, just on a first glance, like I could largely avoid some of probably the other discriminations that and issues that people in the Asian American community who are like full Asian would have to experience, but then still feeling the otherness. Like it's like you still like can't fully get it. Like it's like even though like you have this like privilege, it's like you're still feeling it, and sort of I don't know. I just feel like that's like a little bit different in terms of like what I had to go through, but um yeah, sorry, sort of rambled there.
no, I mean, yeah, I love to hear you rant because like that is real and it's real to you. And so whenever I meet people who are say because I grew up with like half Korean friends in church, going to like
Hmm.
maybe like a Sunday school and going to like the local yeah, Korean American church, or the community center that was like a church on the weekends or whatever, um which is typical of like Asian diaspora communities. And we all have like different struggles. Like even me, like I grew up in a Korean household, and like I was born in Korea technically, so like when I went to America I wasn't even a citizen. And
Yeah.
so like I have a different experience. I'm technically an immigrant, so like I like my parents, so, and my brothers. So um I have a different experience than like the third, fourth generation LA or New York Korean.
Yeah.
American. And so like I feel left out or like out of place because I didn't grow up in those kinds of enclaves or those communities. And so I
Yeah.
always felt left out. I felt like weird and misfit in my own family. And then like going to the church, because wherever church, like it's like the thing where like the family, the parents do their best to keep in touch with the culture and the community. So they'll drive an hour commute to church every
Hmm.
Sunday. And you're like, why are we going so far to be with other Korean people, blah, blah, blah. And they're all like, I grew up in Rhode Island um, for most of my teens. And then like we would drive an hour to go to Boston to go to a Korean church there. And it like I hated that drive, because I would just be like, oh, we gotta go to church every week and Korean people and blah blah blah. And all these kids like, they go to like Lexington High or they go to a, and they're gonna go to like, some university in Boston or something like, but like my day-to-day life, my week life like is in Rhode Island, with like, and like I have like I hang out with mostly with like my white friends in my neighborhood, and I'm one of the only Asian kids. But then when I come to the church, of course everyone's Korean, but these kids, these other guys and girls, like they all go to school together. There's groups of
Mm.
Asians going to school together,
Oh,
but like
okay.
I
So
I
there's like
can't imagine that.
otherness there as well.
Yeah, and so like I always felt out of place wherever I went. And and going back to the point of like how people listening to our stories now, like there's just such a rich diversity of human experiences, and especially when you're looking at like you can zoom out the whole scope of humanity, right? 7+ billion people and all their
Mhm.
family histories and whatever. And then you have all the Asian people, a lot of Asians. And then within the Asian subset, you have the diaspora, and we have people like you and me, we are like immigrants or adoptees or mixed blood, mixed heritage. And so we all have our unique experiences, our own unique struggles. And what I'm trying to say is like, there's millions of us who feel like our struggle is so unique and different and unrelatable. Um, and maybe that like we're alone and no one understands our pain. And that adds to the pain, the feeling of loneliness, and then the desperation, like, oh, like only my life is this fucked up. So there's no hope for me. And I'm not speaking for, of course, I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm trying to take everything I say with 10 grains of salt and more and all that. But I just want to put it out there that maybe it would be advantageous to whoever's listening to consider the fact or the possibility that you're not as alone in your struggles as you think. And because, well, no one can be you. So you do have to deal with the struggles and the traumas and whatever in your own past. You do have to go through that on your own. But so that's like one side of the coin. But then the other one side of the coin is like you are alone. Like no one's ever going to be you or understand, of course, exactly what it's like to be you and go through the shit that you've gone through and all that. What else do you expect? But then the other side is like, no, you're not alone, because everyone feels like, they're alone. Everyone feels like their struggle is unique and different. And if I could overcome my unique, different challenges that I don't think anyone else has, I actually still to this day, I don't know someone quite like me. Like they grew up in a Korean household with Korean siblings that they didn't understand the mother tongue, but then they came to Korea to learn the mother tongue, and now they can speak it with their parents. And like the not knowing the mother tongue was such an emotional hang up for them. I haven't met someone quite like me just yet. So for me, this is like the most monumental like challenge that I've overcome in my life, in my personal life.
Mhm.
I can pinpoint to this. Yeah, it's like I overcome all the decades of negative self-talk, saying that I was too stupid and defective to know my own mother tongue, and
Mhm.
that's why I'm worthless and I'm going to be fat and foolish and stupid and a virgin forever, just play video games and die in my mom's basement kind of shit. I really believe that 110%, that I was a hopeless motherfucker, that I didn't deserve happiness or love. And I tied that a lot with my identity crisis and like not knowing my own mother tongue. And like it's still weird to say that. And like I still dig deeper into it. Um, but if I could overcome this issue, if I could deal with these struggles in a healthy, wholesome, life affirming way, where I go from hating the world, hating my parents, hating my family, hating being Korean and all that, to completely 180, like loving and affirming and wanting to continue to affirm and love and forgive every part of myself, my family, my culture, my heritage. Oh my
It's
God. If
always
then, and so maybe you can do it too. That's what I'm throwing
yeah,
out there.
I feel like the comeback is always like just such a beautiful like journey and moment to like, and I feel like a lot of us can relate to that, right? Of the period of time where you're like fighting with your parents, you see your parents as sort of a reflection of the culture that the larger society you've grown up in rejects, or is embarrassing. And then you go through the journey of realizing that actually all this stuff that you were raised in was so wonderful, and or like the culture was so wonderful, and you actually love it. You love the food, you love the culture, you love the people. And then this sort of like coming to moment where you like go back to it, and you learn to take on that part of yourself again. And I think that's definitely something that I was trying to touch on as much as you can. And because this is a short film that I'm making, so it's going to be at least a little under 15 minutes, I think. So as much as I can touch on a subject like that in 15 minutes, that's definitely something that I wanted to highlight, because I feel like that story is such a uniquely like Asian American story of sort of like the ups and downs of like coming back to your culture and coming back to it with like this like true love and adoration for it, and like sort of reclaiming your identity that you grew up to think was bad. Yeah.
Yes, and that I see. That's why I think your upcoming film, it hasn't even come. It hasn't even come out yet, but it's already
We can
changing
talk more
lives.
about it.
Yeah, and it hasn't even come out yet, and it's already changing lives. Like, so like, what's been the most like impactful or uh impressive response you've gotten to it so far? What was like a story, or what's something someone said that made you go like, wow, like this project is really important? Is there a certain moment in the past several months that made you go like, oh, this is so cool, this is so important?
God, honestly, I feel just like so blessed, and just like really grateful, because I feel like I get something like that every week, like every single week as we've been working on this. Because it used to just be me like working on this script, like getting off my 9 to 5, putting an hour or 2 hours into writing and rewriting. It started as a script that I absolutely hated and thought was terrible. And it probably was terrible. I don't really want to read the first draft of it. But just like spending so much time on it, on a project that I just didn't even think was going to happen. And then I had a great friend who really encouraged me to like keep going with it, and really see it as something that could happen, even though I didn't necessarily believe it myself. And then as I started to reach out, I think that was like one of the first most like beautiful and touching moments for me, was seeing how many people were as excited about this project as I was, and who were so willing to help and like make it become a reality. Because I don't think I believed that when I was writing this, when I was just like working on this by myself, like super tired, and not liking what I had been writing. And then once it got to a certain point and I had started reaching out, it was just, I felt like it was just this like snowball effect of like, we started sharing the script around, trying to find team members. And as we got other team members, they pulled in other people. And it was like all these people who suddenly, like, this wasn't just like my project, my little like shitty script that I was working on forever to try and make good. It was this like, it was a group of people's passion project that they're all willing to spend their time on outside of work. And I think that was definitely like one of the first, like, oh my God, like this is so cool. Like this is awesome. And I can't believe that this is happening. And I just want to do the best that I possibly can to like make this a beautiful piece of art, and give it the due diligence, and really get in the details of it. And so that was sort of like the first thing. But then down the road, I mean, with the casting call on ACN, like all the people's responses on that, like I remember like I was like, it was pretty late at night, and there was a bunch of submissions coming in, and I just like went to check it, and I was like, wait, there's like 45 people that submitted to this. I was like, huh? Like, I'm really confused. Like usually casting calls on ACN get like 25 likes, and that's about what I was expecting. And then I started reading them, and I sort of like just got really into it, forgot that it was late, like stayed up pretty late, like reading everybody's responses. And it was just so heartwarming to be like, like this is, we can all of us see a little bit of ourselves in the main character, Olivia, the black sheep. All of us see a little bit of ourselves in Jenny, like the obedient daughter who always does what she's told. Like all of us see a little bit of ourselves of the proper son, Michael. And it was just really incredible just to see like the response from just such like a little thing. And every single week, there's just these little prizes, surprises, and just like that reaffirms that we need to make this and we need to do our best damn job at it.
I'm really pumped about it. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see like the finished product, and like I support you like 100% with this project. This is so cool, and
Thank
like,
you.
it's such an important story. You know, I think maybe at the beginning of our conversation here, you're just like, oh, surprised that like so many people are late, but it's the story because I mean, intergenerational trauma. I mean, that's like its own aisle in a bookstore for whatever
There's a lot of stories to be told from that.
right. There's a lot of stories to be told. It's not, I mean, this is a global like human problem, right? Intergenerational trauma, but especially
Yeah.
for Asians and especially for Asian diaspora like ourselves. And so this is, I mean, it's the heart arguably of like my podcast, and why like the message that I want to put out, which is like I want people to heal. I'm doing this because I feel like I've healed to a certain degree, and in my journey of healing, I want to share that it's possible with other people. And with the healing comes immense opportunities for the future. So like there's a, in Korean we call it Han. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's a Chinese Sino-Chinese character for it as well. Like so, the concept of Han is literally intergenerational trauma. It's like the idea of like in society, it's from Korea's history of being conquered by other civilizations, whether it's from the Japanese or the Chinese and the Mongols and so on. Like because they were forced into subjugation, they just had to like hold in their pain. They just had to be conquered and just take it. And like they had no choice but to take it off to like their wives and then their children and whatever. And this kind of is played out over decades, hundreds, thousands of years into modern society. Like the CEO who has a kid, he was yelled at by his parents. His dad really beat him, and then like the kid had no way to fight back, so he just held in this anger and this sadness. And then so he just grows up, and then he takes it out on his wife and his employees, the upper management. And then those upper management at the company, they go to their wives at home and they yell at their wives and yell at their kids, and it perpetuates this cycle of pain and trauma that goes like, because like you took it from someone else, so you let it out on other people. And that's exactly what happens to that. I see that in every single Korean person. I see that in I think that's in every Asian person. This trauma, that this darkness, this primordial darkness, the pain body, as Eckhart Tolle calls it. It just runs so deep, and I'm just so fucking sick of it. Like we have the best opportunity in human history to stop the pain, stop the cycle of harm.
Yeah.
Thousands of years, tens of thousands.
That was
of
something
years.
that I was like really thinking about, like just how do you stop it, especially something that runs so deep. It's like my mom, her mom, her mom, like it just like generations and generations. And like how do you come to a place where you're able to forgive for the whole generation down the line, and in a way where it's like nobody was necessarily bad or good, and you understand where it comes from, but how do you like both honor your pain while also getting to this place, honoring your parents and honoring your own pain, and how do you do that through forgiveness?
Well, just by talking to each other like this, Chelsie.
Exactly.
Actually, yeah, through beautiful pieces of art like your upcoming short film Mandarins, and through just literally just our conversations where it starts with dialogues like this, because our conversations like this will change the fucking future and the destinies of people who are listening, because of the emotional impact. They're like, you can be listening right this, they're like, oh my god, I have so much privilege. I can believe in myself that I can help stop or at least reduce the cycle of pain. And I just want to say, like, the buck stops here, because and I just brainwashed myself, like there's never a better time in human history. I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I am privileged, which is true. And so I'm going to take that privilege and honor myself and my child self who experienced all that past trauma, acknowledging all that as best as I can, and then forgiving all grievances, real or imagined, towards everyone in my past, because that's the kind of person that I want to be. If I want to imagine that my ancestors were heroes, and even if they weren't, if they were just like, I don't know, degenerate, like really shitty people, like my great grandparents or whatever, or like who, like, for my own sake, I want to believe that they're honorable heroes. And if they could look at me today, they would be so proud of who I am. Like they would give me a big hug, and then like we would just talk for hours and drink soju and like, you know, just like kick it. And like they would be so amazed that someone like me exists and that I come from them. So we can change lives right now. Like I'm changing my life. I've changed my life, and I continue to excel and be better. And so if we can collectively raise the vibrations of consciousness and heal and in healing and forgiveness in your social circles and my social circles, art communities, whether Asian Creative Network or Asian Health Network, and like have this like, so the Han, the intergenerational trauma is a deadly virus upon mankind that is threatening to destroy humanity and like divide us from our families and keep us from living fulfilled lives. So we need to fight that with another virus, the virus of healing and forgiveness, the virus of forgiveness. I don't know, maybe I'll work on this metaphor or something, but we need to counter that with the you know, the COVID pandemic of intergenerational trauma, which is way more serious than COVID in my opinion, because it runs deeper and longer, and that actually kills people emotionally forever and leaves us dead inside if we don't address it. That's the real pandemic upon humanity and the Asian peoples is intergenerational trauma. So we need to fight it with our own antidote, and we need to cure ourselves of this disease by the vaccine of forgiveness. I hope that makes sense.
That was an extended analogy. Did you have like any other questions about the film? I know that I assume you're going to be editing this, right?
I really like everything about it. So far, I don't really find anything worth editing because I'm enjoying every moment of this, and I think the audience will too. So like I've got questions, of course, but is there something in particular that you want to share about the film? Like, what do you want people to get out of it in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just like really wanted to, and I feel really honored to do it. And I'm sure there are a bunch of other people who can as well and really should, but I just wanted to really like make something for our community, for like the Asian American community. I feel like, there is this upwards trend of Asian Americans being like this trendy topic. And it's in the news a lot more. People are talking more about it. But there still is sort of a lack of like deep and like thoughtful diversity on screen. I feel like it's not just the like checkbox, have the Asian face on screen, and don't really like give it the due diligence of having their like culture be there. Like I just wanted to really like make something that is for the Asian community, American community first and foremost. And so if other people can relate to, which I think it is a relatable story, because forgiveness is something that's universal and something that we all struggle with or striving for. But I wanted to make it like specifically for our community, and just touch on the things that I think a lot of us may have experienced with our own parents. And I'm rambling a little bit.
No, that's fine. The thought just came to my mind.
Yeah.
What's has there been a specific challenge throughout the production so far? Like, like whether it's like a logistic thing or like an emotional thing, like what's been the most difficult or challenging part of this whole creation process for you?
I think there's like a lot of little challenges, although I will say I've been feeling like very blessed with just all the progress that we have been making. I will say, okay, so I'll start with the challenges of as I was writing the story. as I was writing the story, it was very, very important to me that no character in that film was explicitly the bad guy or the good guy, because I feel like that reflects reality a lot more than having, like, obviously you're going to root for the main character Olivia, even as she continues to fail throughout the story, but her siblings, who may, I think, on at first glance appear to be sort of like the bad guys of the film, aren't actually bad people, and you can sort of understand that they are also, like, all the siblings are a product of the circumstance and their reactions to how they were raised. So I think as I was writing it, that was sort of a challenge of approaching it in a way that was very thoughtful and didn't paint anyone as explicitly bad, and just, yeah, just really like thinking deeply about it and trying to create the backstory around each character that made it clear to the audience that nobody was like the true evil, and that it really was the trauma that was the thing, that the most bad thing that was affecting everybody in the film, including the character that doesn't get to speak, which is the mother. So that was, I would think, the challenge that I was working through, and that's why I think it took so long for me to write, because I just wanted to be like very careful about it, and give it the thought that I thought that it deserved, the thought that I thought it deserved.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for sending me the script. For the audience here, Chelsie did give me a cheeky sneak peek preview of the script, and I loved it. And you know, I'm not gonna give any spoilers or anything, but I felt that you were trying to portray the characters as such. Like, no one is like a bad person. Like, reading it was like, it's kind of funny how that works. Like, you're reading a story, like, okay, who's a hero, who's a villain, you know, why are they bad? Like, I was like, and I caught myself feeling that, like, okay, like, is what she, the main character, or the other characters, like, I'm going to judge them, like, what are they doing and what are they saying? Is that right? Is that what I would do? How can I relate? But then about halfway through the script, I was just like, oh no, they're just all real people. No one is a quote unquote like a bad guy. It's it's just like they're all relatable. So yeah, like, I really like that, and I like that you said that as well. So, because it confirmed my own experience as I was reading the script. Like, yeah, they're not all bad people. Just, it's like real life. It's like real life. Yeah.
And I think over the last few weeks, like, I mean, I was blown away by the response to the casting call. But basically the story, as you know, is primarily based on these like sort of long drawn out monologues from each of the siblings, recounting a story or a memory of their own mother and sort of building the picture of who she is. And so going into this, after we had formed the team and we had done like a deep dive script read through, we were like, we are going to need some damn good actors. Like, this story, like, we could throw as much money at it, put as much like thought and like detailed in the set design and the camera work, but if our actors are not good, like, this won't work. And so that was definitely like a worry of mine, of being in the DC area, which is not necessarily like the most well-known city for like a hot pocket of actors, right? Like, people who are really trying to make it as actors are typically like in New York City or LA. And so that was definitely like a concern of mine. But we found our Olivia from the open casting call. We're so excited about her, and she sort of relates to the story on a deeper level, which is really cool. And casting announcements are coming soon. I don't know if they're going to be out by the time this episode airs, but we're hoping to release it really soon. We've officially cast all of our characters, and 2 of them are professional actors that people may or may not have seen before. So yeah, so I'm elated by it, and that was another like crazy surprise for us, was a couple of professional actors who have been in some things, and they were interested in the film and being in it and supporting it. And it was so cool. Like, it's a couple of like, you know, young filmmakers early in their careers who were just trying to make this story. And they're like people who are older and like more experienced and who were into it. So that was another really pleasant surprise. So that initial sort of worry that was just sort of in the back of my mind for a while has has mostly been resolved. And yeah, I'm just so excited.
That's awesome. It sounds like everything is falling into place, and of course, everyone's doing their part and putting in, the hustling, of course. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just thinking about like all the things that go into, a production like this, and I'm just thinking like, wow, like the ancestors would be proud is the thought that keeps coming to my mind, because I just think like I just imagine like the spirits of the ancestors of your ancestors and all the people who are involved, like lifting up the people who are involved in the project in any way, whether it's the casted actors or whether it's you, like all the pieces are involved, like they're watching over you, like they're guiding you to do the right decision, and because it's going to change lives. It's just going to change lives. I mean, it's already changing my life in a way, because it made me like revisit all of my own trauma and stuff like that, which I mean, I talk about my trauma all the time, but
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, this is some real shit. This is good. So I'm really pumped about it, Chelsie. So
We'll get you a preview before it's released for sure.
ooh, oh baby, yes. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, Chelsie. If people want to be updated about the film, where should they go? And if they want to reach out to you, how should they?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we're going to be adding team members down the road. For our post-production team isn't fully realized. We really just have our pre-production core team right now. So that'll come down the road, but yeah, would really appreciate any sort of support you give in terms of a follow on our Instagram account, which is Mandarins Film, and then also our Facebook page, which is Mandarins Film, and then also our mailing list on our website, where you can check out some more cool things like director's statement, core team bios, and then the lookbook, which has a lot of cool color palettes and rich colors, and sort of can make you understand what is to come a little bit better. But yeah, and then another thing I wanted to say is that films do cost money, so we'll be doing a crowdfunding campaign. I think it's going to launch in April. So just if you follow the Instagram and Facebook, we'll be making posts about it. So keep an eye on that.
Hell yeah. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we say bye-bye?
I don't think so. Was there any other questions you had for me?
No, I mean, I think that was it. And this is as close as to perfect as I could imagine for this conversation. Considering this is also like the first time we met, but I'm so grateful to have met you, and that we could just connect on such a deep, important topic like this right away. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
thank you so much for your time, Chelsie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, Mime Timers, thank you for tuning in today, and we will talk to you next time. And I'll have all the links to everything, to Mandarin's film and all that, in the show notes, in the description, whichever platform you are checking this out in. So talk to you next time. Mime time. Oh. Oh.